Coming up on Tech News Today, what Amazon didn't tell you about the Kindles, Apple wants to crush Pandora, and the secrets of Google Maps. All that and more coming up.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust. This is TWiT.
Bandwidth for Tech News Today is provided by Cachefly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Tech News Today for Friday, September 7th, 2012. Tech News Today is brought to you by Gazelle, the fast and simple way to sell your iPhone, iPad, MacBook, or Android smartphones. Find out what your gadget is worth and get cash to upgrade to the latest iPhone at Gazelle.com. And by the new Squarespace. Squarespace introduces a new content management system, making it faster and easier to create a high-quality website or blog. Plus, more than 50 new features, including mobile responsive designs. For a free trial and 10% off your first purchase, go to squarespace.com and use offer code TNT9. Welcome to Tech News Today. I'm Tom Merritt.
I'm Sarah Lane.
I'm Iyaz, Akhtar.
And I'm Jason Howell.
And this is the show where we bring you the most important stories in the tech world every day, starting each time with the top 10 stories of the day in the news feeds. Tech Radar and The Verge are reporting they have sources who say the Nokia Lumia 920 Windows Phone will come out November 8th. Nokia is apparently working with Microsoft and AT&T to complete tests and sign off on the release date. Microsoft tentatively plans to launch Windows Phone 8 itself on October 29th.
The New York Times reports that Apple is planning to develop a service that would compete with Pandora, giving customers streams of music customized to their tastes. Apple is reportedly in the early stages of negotiating with music labels, but the service would most likely come as a pre-installed app on iOS.
Reuters reports that Apple is ordering less memory from Samsung and that Samsung will not be providing memory for the first batch of the next iPhone. Instead, Apple's gone with Toshiba, Elpida, and Hynix. So is this just Apple being sour about that whole patent war thing between the companies? According to Reuters sources, no. Apple had been looking to widen its supply chain for some time now.
Sour apple. I like that flavor in Jolly Ranchers. With the PC market generally in the doldrums and many people holding off buying a new PC until after Windows 8 comes out at the end of October, it's no surprise that Intel announced their Q3 sales figures will be lower than previously expected. The chipmaker now expects $13.2 billion in sales, give or take $300 million, down from $13.8 to $14.8 that they previously thought. While Intel stock took a dip on the news, the NASDAQ itself remained pretty much unfazed.
U.S. Trade Commission Judge Thomas Pender indicated on Friday that Apple would have a hard time invalidating 2 HTC patents. The judge said, "Clear and convincing means something to me, and I have to be pretty darn certain a U.S. patent is invalid." HTC accuses Apple of infringing 2 patents on wireless data transmission. A victory by HTC could lead to a request for bans on the sale of the newest iPads and iPhones.
Good old sassy Judge Thomas Pender, huh? If the UK passes the Communications Data Bill, Jimmy Wales says that he will enable encryption on Wikipedia for UK web users. The bill would require British ISPs to keep records of every website visited by its customers for a period of 12 months. By encrypting Wikipedia, the ISPs would only see that users are visiting Wikipedia and not particular pages.
This just in. I misspoke earlier. It's not November 8th that they're rumoring the Lumia 920 comes out. It's November 2nd. I can't read. A federal judge has approved a settlement between the Justice Department and 3 major publishers over accusations of ebook collusion. Hachette, Simon & Schuster, and HarperCollins have agreed to terminate current ebook agreements, not agree to contracts that restrict retailers' ebook pricing in the future. Apple, Penguin, and Macmillan have not settled and will go to trial next summer. Random House was never named in the suit.
Reuters reports that Audience, that's the company behind noise-canceling technology in iPhones, may be left out of the next version of the iPhone. CEO Peter Santos said that normal course of business led us to believe that our technology is not likely to be enabled in Apple's next-generation mobile phone. Santos also informed shareholders of the same thing, but Apple has not commented.
It's still not time to trust Java yet. Despite fixes from Oracle, InfoWorld reports that multiple security experts recommend continuing to temporarily disable all Java use whenever possible. Last week, Oracle released emergency updates to fix zero-day vulnerabilities in Java 7 and Java 6, but the Java 7 fix allows an existing flaw to be exploited to bypass the Java sandbox. In other words, while fixing some flaws, Oracle opened the door to a new one.
The Wall Street Journal says that Google is fighting the FBI by not giving the agency passwords when requested, even after a search warrant. According to Adam Gershwitz, a law professor at William and Mary Law School, the Fifth Amendment should protect a person from having to turn over their password. However, the feds are trying to do a workaround by asking Google and Apple for passwords. Neither the company nor the FBI have made official statements on the matter.
All right, this episode of Tech News Today brought to you by Gazelle.com. We've been talking all week about Gazelle. We've been talking all week about new products. New products announcements are not going to stop. There's going to be a bunch more. There's not only the Apple announcement next week, there's going to be a new Nintendo Wii, probably details coming on that. There's going to be Microsoft Surface tablets coming in October. If you're tempted by these gadgets, you might want to scrape together some cash. And if you're busy and you're like, I don't want to go through the trouble of trying to sell my gadgets, go to Gazelle.com. It is simple. It's fast. It'll take you just a couple minutes to go and put your iPhone, your iPad, your Mac, your Android phone up for sale, get a quote. Once you get a quote, lock it in for 30 days. You don't have to send it to them right away. You can wait until you get the details on that product you've been waiting to buy. And Gazelle will pay you fast once you do send it to them. They give you a shipping label, so it's free shipping. You send it off to them, and within a few days of receiving the product, you'll get cash either by check, or so it's not really cash in that case, or in your PayPal account. I guess that's cash in your PayPal account, right?
Yeah, it's cash to me.
It's all cash to me. And if you get an Amazon gift certificate, you actually get 5% bonus. So I do it a lot because I'm busy. I got things to do like napping, watching episodes of TV shows on Hulu. I don't want to spend a lot of time trying to figure out how to sell stuff. So I go to Gazelle.com and I get a fast and easy quote that I can be lazy and take 30 days to send them the thing too. So take advantage of it. They want you to. Go to Gazelle.com right now because your gadgets aren't getting any more valuable. And we thank them for their support of Tech News Today.
I like how you need to make more time in your day for napping.
I'm really enjoying napping these days. It's
an enjoyable thing. I agree.
It's helping me out quite
I
a
don't
bit.
think anyone would disagree.
Somebody
I think
should
people
gamify
don't.
that.
It's not important enough in people's lives. Let's kick off by talking a little bit more about those Amazon Kindles that were announced yesterday. We told you all the things that Amazon did announce, but more details came out after the announcement.
Yeah, lots of questions were answered. One of the bigger questions was what's running underneath that Amazon skin, and Amazon did confirm that the Fire HD is using Android 4.0. And then people were like, hey, why are those Fires so cheap? Well, it turns out all of them are ad-supported. There is no higher-priced option for any of these, of the Fire or the Fire HDs. You're going to see an ad on your lock screen when you turn on your device. So that's why they're all ad-supported. And again, you're not going to see an option even to buy a more expensive version. And then this is pretty huge. The Fire and the HD versions are going to be available in Europe. This is the first time the Kindle Fire or any...
That was a big question we had from the chat room yesterday.
Right. The international audience was very curious about this, but it looks like the UK is going to get it on October 25th. It's going to cost £129 for the Kindle Fire. The Fire HD 7 is going to be £159. For the 16 gigabyte, £200 for the 32 gigabyte. France is also going to get it, Germany, Italy, Spain. So they're all getting this at the price of around €159 to €199. So like a whole bunch of details there. I'm kind of curious about how people are going to react to the whole ad-supported version of the Kindle.
Well, there's an article on Engadget right now that says an Engadget reader had complained to Amazon and had received an email from Amazon saying, I understand you would like to opt out of the special offer and be willing to pay extra for opting out of that special offer. Options for unsubscribing special offers will be announced soon.
Because with the e-ink, you can still buy it without special offers.
Yes.
For instance, the Paperwhite is $139, but it's the one that
Kindle Fires.
Yeah, it's the one that everybody's really attracted to. It's the color ones that are the ones that you can't. I mean, that's the more obtrusive ones, I guess, is what I'm saying, right? I mean, having it on the e-ink, I guess, can be kind of an eyesore, or for some people might be willing to pay $20 for. But having it in color every time you open it up, I guess that's a better ad.
They have the ability to have animations if they wanted to. It could be a lot more annoying now that I think about it. And it has a speaker, so I doubt that you're going to have a full-on video ad.
They better not.
But I bet with that response by Amazon, that sounds like they're not going to give you the option when you buy it. But when you get the device, there might be a little like, would you like to opt out? You can pay us this way. So it keeps that price really low when you go to the site.
It seems insidious for some reason. And I know it's the same thing, right?
But it puts the lower priced models out in the public. And so these are all of the totals that we're all throwing around. And then for another $20, $25, you can, opt out of ads, that sort of thing. That's fine. And a lot of people will probably take advantage of it, but it still makes them all sound more reasonable off the top.
What do we think of Amazon actually entering the international market? I mean, the Fire kind of petered out after a while in the United States because it seemed like they'd reached a saturation point. Anybody who wanted one got one. The excitement kind of died out, and you couldn't get it anywhere else. But now that these devices look, I mean, they seem pretty good. They look like they're going to be very competitive compared to everything else out there. Are they going to take a larger global market share because of their incredibly low pricing, and they're finally hitting Europe?
Seems like it seems to me now that the Kindle Fire was a very successful experiment for Amazon. They kept it U.S. only. They saw great sales. Like you said, Iyaz, everyone who wanted one bought one, so the sales didn't just keep rising exponentially. But I think now they're ready. They're ready to go into the international market. There were a lot of folks that, over the last year who've said, yeah, Kindle Fire sounds fine. We've never been able to get our hands on one, so whatever. And now it's like these are the models that are actually impressing people all over again.
It's interesting to me because it's a two-pronged attack. They are trying to push the Amazon Prime instant video into other markets. They will take it outside the United States, and they are in a couple of cases. But do you lead with the device when the device is meant to make you the money off the content and you don't have all the content there?
Well, in the UK, the version of the Fire is not going to have the Amazon Prime benefits, but it's going to have 1 month trial of Love Film, which I think Amazon owns
Love Film. Yeah, exactly.
They do have some content partnerships already over in that place, and I believe they also opened up their app stores to those locations as well recently. I'm kind of curious about. I mean, Amazon didn't have to go with Android 4.0. The thing is, now that it's under there, I mean, there's really no reason they had to update that operating system, but they did. Jason, do you think that's going to make Android people kind of happy, the fact that Amazon bothered to put on Android 4.0 underneath, that you could do some things that you probably couldn't have with Gingerbread?
I mean, I think spec-wise, it brings it on parity more or less with some of their competitors, and certain people in the Android world are going to look for that right away. That's why people were so curious, and they failed to mention it in the presentation, which was kind of strange. Maybe the general consumer doesn't care so much about that, but I do think that upgrading it to the most current version of the OS is going to make things smoother. That's why those updates happen, So if they hadn't done that, sure, that would have been a big kind of thorn in the side of the potential of the device for sure.
And one more tiny tidbit about Amazon: they also said they're pretty much done with the DX. They didn't say they're not abandoning it.
Pour a little out for the DX.
They just said they're pretty much done. I think that's the actual quote. Pretty much done.
That's like Twitter and the Mac app. We're not going to pull it.
Right.
We're just pretty much done.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
We'll sell the rest of the DXs, but that's the end.
We're not going to.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about Apple because we never really talk about them enough.
No, it's been a good solid month since we talked about Apple.
This is interesting, though.
Yeah, this actually
as opposed to everything else.
This has
Instead
little
of an
to
iPhone
do
case leak.
with next week's announcement,
Right.
at least as far as we know now. Wall Street Journal is reporting Apple is in talks to license music to create a Pandora rival. Now, of course, Pandora works by royalty costs that Pandora pays.
Mechanical royalties, I think they're called.
Yes,
often.
because it's
Yeah.
actually paying the government for royalties rather than actually.
Well, it's a government-controlled procedure that is operated by an independent agency. It's complicated,
Right.
But no, they don't have to negotiate for the amount. The amount's set.
That's exactly right. So the reason that this is interesting is, okay, well, Pandora's a really successful company. It has something like 60 million users right now, but doesn't make a lot of money because it has to pay all these royalty costs. What Apple would like to do is negotiate for better license agreements. So, for example, if I have a Pandora station of the Foo Fighters, and I really like this one Foo Fighter song, well, I might hear that fairly often, but I can't set how often I hear that whole song. It's a radio that I'm not totally controlling. I can control things that I like. Oh, I like that song. I'd like to hear more like that. Or I did not like that song in my Foo Fighter station. Thumbs down. Don't want to hear that again, want to hear less of that kind of thing.
And the reason for that is the mechanical royalty only covers playing songs. It doesn't cover control of them. So as soon as you give somebody the ability to repeat a song or choose the songs, now it's a playlist. Now it's covered by a whole different agreement.
Exactly. So the deal with Pandora is that even though it has a lot of users, in fact, a recent consumer study by Nielsen showed that more adults said that they use Pandora to listen to music than iTunes. Although as of June, Apple says that there are more than 400 million iTunes accounts. So you have to think that Apple's going, okay, well, we have all these people with accounts, but if more people are using Pandora than ever, that's actually a service that obviously if we were offering, there's a good likelihood that many millions of our users would be interested in.
And they've got a bunch of Lala people still kicking around from the old days that maybe the company Lala, I'm not insulting them, who are probably, Lala may have been developing a similar service, so that may be something that was in the works that they've been pitching. Who knows?
Yeah, in fact, these sources, who of course are unnamed, according to the Wall Street Journal, and by the way, All Things D says they have different sources, although they're both owned by the same parent company, different sources that are confirming the same thing. So got a couple sources now saying, yeah, this is happening, that Apple considered a Pandora competitor back in the day, just decided not to because licensing costs are very restrictive and focused on what's now their Genius service, which suggests songs that you'll like based on what you've purchased. So not actually the Pandora model at all. Now, and it's also worth noting that this is not Apple getting into a streaming service at all. This is not a Spotify competitor. Although Spotify has this year introduced Pandora functionality. So as a Spotify customer, I can stream albums and I pay a flat fee per month, but I can also choose a Foo Fighters radio station. Now, it works a little bit differently because they have different algorithms, but other services have realized that the Pandora model is very attractive to people. The problem is that the royalty costs associated with the Pandora style of online radio has prevented Pandora from ever making a profit. So, in the 3 months that ended at the end of July, Pandora lost $5.5 million about. They made over $100 million in revenue, but the content acquisition cost for the period increased 79% compared with the same quarter last year, which outstripped its revenue growth of 51%. So Pandora continues to grow, but it has to offload over half of what it pulls in to pay for these royalties. So Apple, you figure so Apple's got leverage and they've got a lot of money. They can pay more for licensing agreements by going straight to the music licensing companies. So they could get sort of a step up on the Pandora model because they could pay more outright, and then they could have maybe more leverage to say, well, I don't want to ban on playing a certain song too often. I want the kind of licensing agreements that would make it more like terrestrial radio, where, a bunch of hit songs are played, you pick a station, and you're more likely to hear all the songs that you want to hear. Maybe there's a little less discovery.
And iTunes kind of approximates that in a couple of ways. They have a bunch of radio stations. People forget that. And they also have the Genius thing, where you can create a smart playlist.
Exactly. That's based on music you've purchased, though. And this would not require you to be purchasing stuff. Although, of course, if you hear a song, anything that Apple puts together, they're very good at saying, would you like to see this on iTunes? I'll kick you right over to the album, and you can either buy that track or buy the whole thing. I think this makes perfect sense, actually. I think that the Pandora model, even though as a consumer of music, I really like it, it's clear that Pandora's it's sort of a losing game as far as a money game goes. They just have so many users that they continue on. Go ahead.
The thing with Apple, this is a very crowded space, right? There's a lot of different streaming services out there. There's Pandora, there's Mog, there's Rdio, there's Spotify. They're all kind of jockeying for the streaming music kind of market. The thing that Apple has as a huge advantage is if they can tie it together with all the data that they have on you, with the Genius playlists or checking what you've purchased before to give you a different experience. I think they can probably lock that down, because I'm pretty sure if Apple introduces this product, even though it's been around for a very long time, of like, hey, look, you put a seed song, and look how great this is, their Genius feature, people are going to turn around and going to act like it's brand new. Because Pandora's been around for a long time. It's just, I believe some car manufacturers have put it in their cars, but they don't. A lot of people don't know what that means. Like, what's Pandora? Like that. It's got a great service, but it doesn't have that same traction or that kind of marketing Apple could do. They say, look, we have the best version of this ever, which they probably will say.
And these are already people using iTunes. Pandora has to convince someone, if they're not familiar with Pandora, what it is, and maybe they're not even musically inclined. Maybe they just don't care. It's not a service that they would use. But if you're already in iTunes and you think, well, sheesh, I spent so much money on albums last month, maybe I'd like to explore other opportunities, it just makes a lot of sense for Apple to to give this option.
Should they just buy Pandora though?
Well, I thought about that this morning. They could.
They got the cash. There's no question.
I
about
know
that.
that's the thing.
And what Pandora has on their side is already established relationships with the music industry, which I guess Apple does too. That's not a big advantage, but they've got people on the street selling ads into their system, making it pay. It's not profitable, but they really thought they were going to go broke when this mechanical royalty deal was put out because they said it's way too expensive, but they've been able to make it work.
Yeah, Pandora's music is interspersed with ads. If you're using the free model, I use it. I hear the ads fairly regularly. They actually use iAds, which is Apple's advertising system in iOS. And did you think I said Iyaz?
For half a second.
He looked up for a half second, yeah.
Like,
they don't actually use you.
They don't use me? I should get paid for
as
this.
far as I know.
When they introduced that product,
I
that
just
annoyed
wish I
the
didn't
heck out
hear
of me.
your ads every 5 minutes on Pandora.
So, yes, you should definitely
Jeez.
listen to me, Sarah Lane. Iyaz Akhtar, right here, iyazaktar.com.
Okay, let's say
Art.
let's say Apple wants to negotiate better licensing agreements, but do they want to be a Pandora competitor or do they want to just buy Pandora? I don't think that's that far-fetched.
Yeah.
I think that they're still talking to the powers that be to try to figure out what kind of better licensing agreements can we have, because Apple doesn't want to just inherit this mess. They want better situation for them. But if they could just buy Pandora's users, that might be a lot easier.
I couldn't see them buying it because when Apple buys something, they dismantle and integrate.
They don't like to
They don't want to have
separate brands.
They don't want the Pandora brand on there. If anybody's going to buy it, it'd be like something like Google, because they don't mind doing that kind of thing.
Right.
Eventually dismantling. But Apple, I think the only reason Apple would ever get into this is if it could lead to more sales in the iTunes store. Otherwise, if they're going to have this loss leader concept, that's not Apple. They don't bother with that kind of nonsense. So I would think the only reason this would make any sense is if their marketing research shows that they will make more sales. That's going to make the difference.
All right, let's move on to a great article in The Atlantic by Alexis Madrigal that came out about Google Maps and the internal workings of Google Maps. You absolutely should go read it at theatlantic.com. He got to meet with a lot of the people that make this happen. Manik Gupta, the senior product manager for Google Maps, a former NASA engineer, Michael Weiss-Malik, who spent his 20% time working on Google Mars, and a guy they call the Operator. I think that's a title. It's not just a nickname, Nick Volmar. As I was reading this, and I'm seeing how they collate all of this different information, I was like, I need somebody to help explain this. So I called up an old friend of mine, Theresa Noyes, who is a professional cartographer in Austin, Texas. Theresa, thanks for joining us today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
So what they're saying in this article is that they start with tiger data from the U.S. Census Bureau, not data about tigers. It's the name of the database. And then they start to add in other layers of information, things like the U.S. Geological Survey. But then it gets crazy. They add in the Street View team and all of the maps that the Street View team makes. Google publishes more Street View data every 2 weeks than it possessed in its entire company in 2006. So it's pretty impressive. They can extract street signs, embed them in the map, can index any word visible from the street, even logos eventually. What is your take as a professional who does this sort of thing, looking at what they're describing Google doing? Because it blows me away. But is some of this stuff common?
I wouldn't say that it's commonplace just yet. I think the need for it is commonplace. I think the power in this is that they're really taking what makes maps so powerful for all of the users, and that they're rendering our everyday experiences with what we see when we look down at a map vertically. So you might need directions to a store, but it's much better if you talk to someone that's already driven there. And they're really fusing those two experiences. And it's unique in that way. They're taking the human rendering of navigation and a sense of place, and they're putting it into their application.
Yeah, I like this quote from the article. It says, "The maps we used to keep folded in our glove compartments were a collection of lines and shapes that we overlaid with human intelligence. Now, as we've seen, a map is a collection of lines and shapes with Nick Volmar's intelligence encoded within it." Not just Nick, though. I mean, Nick's this operator who goes in and kind of tweaks the map. I'm curious if that's something that you looked at and saw as familiar, this idea of going in and taking a map and saying, okay, there's a roundabout that someone reported to us is not there, so I'm going to add that to the map. And then I'm going to check to see if the Google Street View covered that, and he saw that it did. How far off is that from the kind of tools that are in existence that you use?
No, it's absolutely accurate. I mean, their reference to calling it ground truthing is exactly what you do. I mean, the very nature of a map is that you have so many versions of it, and the moment that it's put out, humans are changing things, real time. And what's different with this is the time cycle on it. They're changing it relatively immediately compared to, the rest of us that are serving up things. So their turnaround time is phenomenal with this. And of course, they have a battalion of cartographers and analysts that are going in and fixing everything.
Yeah, it's a massive amount of users, a massive amount of Street View car data, a massive amount of other data, and then a massive amount of money to pay all those people, I guess. What kinds of things? And they talk in the Atlantic about some of the things we could see from this, like the ability to pull data out of the maps based on indexing. I thought that was really interesting. They do a little bit of that now, where they take the street signs, as I mentioned, so that they know that an exit is pointing towards these particular streets. Can you talk about just from your own guessing, like what kinds of uses we could put that to?
I think, honestly, in my reaction to that, or my response to that portion of it, is where you start getting a little bit closer to the clutter line. Usability is different for every single person. So what might be a piece of information that you need for snap judgment when you're navigating might be overload for another person. So I really think the best component of this application is going to be them finding that fine line where they're not just overloading and creating noise in the device, but they're maintaining use. So if that answers your question.
Yeah, so that data needs to stay under the ground, in the ground truth.
Yeah, the backdrop, I think it's the strength in its functionality is that we're not hearing how it's making all of these decisions. It's just telling us where the traffic is. And that's really the strength in it. It's generalizing that data for us. And that's the use of a map, right? Like someone has streamlined that information for you so that you're not constantly processing too much information when you're really supposed to be safely driving the car.
As somebody in our chat room just asked if you fear for your job, but it sounds like from this that this means more jobs for humans if this becomes more common.
I would agree with what you just said. Yeah, absolutely. It's generating more and more work. The work is just changing. And so the idea is to keep up, right? Like your skills have to keep moving. So the idea of hand rendered maps, of course, we gave that up a while ago. And the whole occupation just keeps changing. And that's honestly what makes it such an exciting arena to be in right now.
There was also some crazy talk in this article about the idea that we would shoot for getting a map of the entire world that is accurate to the entire world. Is that even something we want? Is it even possible? The Borgesian map?
Well, we are talking about one-to-one again, so I guess we need a cloned planet. If you've got one of those in your back pocket, that'd be great. I'd start the project for you.
Okay, good to know. I'll let you know if I ever get that far. Theresa, it's great to see you. Great to talk to you. Thanks for taking the time to talk with us today.
My pleasure, Tom. Thank you.
All right, let's take a quick break before we get to a couple more discussion stories and thank our sponsor, Squarespace.com. Now faster and easier than ever. I was just using it last night for my United Moon Colonies site because we're telling you all the time about Squarespace 6, how easy it is to use, the new templates, how it resizes your site automatically for all the different platforms, HTML5, CSS3. But if you're already on Squarespace, you should know that you can convert over to Squarespace 6. Squarespace wants you to know that that is something that they want you to do. You can transfer over your billing, transfer over. But if you're like, you know what, I'm still just trying to try Squarespace 6. I'm not sure if I want Squarespace. Go try it out right now because you're going to love it. It's better than ever. It's easier to use than ever. And you don't have to give them any kind of information to try it out. No credit card needed. Go try that new page builder tool called the Layout Engine. It enables you to customize pages in seconds by adding blocks of content like photos, videos, text, social media content, and immediately preview that layout as you go. It's easier than ever. Go try out that free trial, squarespace.com. You don't have to give them a credit card. You don't have to give them anything but the name of the website you're going to try, and you can change that later if you want as well. Sign up for that free account. If you do decide to purchase Squarespace, no credit card needed to try it out. But if you do decide to try it out, use the offer code TNT9 and get 10% off your first purchase on new Squarespace accounts. That's monthly or annual plans. And if you get an annual plan, not only you get 10% off the entire year, you get a free domain name as well. That's squarespace.com. Use that offer code TNT9 so they know you came from us. And we thank them for their support of Tech News Today. We mentioned in the news fuse, Intel had to revise their forecast down from 13.8 to 14.8 billion down to 13.2 billion. A few reasons for that. Customers are buying fewer chips because they're selling fewer PCs with chips in them. It's called inventory control, but essentially the folks who make the PCs have more PCs left to sell, so they're ordering fewer chips to build more PCs. There's also slowing demand in enterprise and the emerging markets. Data centers are growing as the cloud grows, so that's one positive side, but overall the economy just sucks. And Intel is also reducing its capital expenditures because it's trying to save money by converting existing machinery rather than buying all new machinery when it moves down that nanometer line as the nanometer size of the chips gets smaller. Now, that should be balanced with the fact that SEMI, which is a chipmaker trade group, predicts spending will rise in 2013 16.7%. They say, 2012 is going to decline 5%, but it's going to bounce back next year. And one of the reasons they say this, and this ties into another story you were mentioning in News Fuse, is Samsung is a chip maker as well. Samsung is going to be pumping out logic chips and NAND flash for mobile devices like crazy in the next year. And now maybe Apple is going to reduce their order from Samsung a little bit, but apparently Samsung, mobile devices are booming. Everybody knows that, and Samsung's going to benefit from that. They're building a $7 billion new factory in China. And SEMI predicts Intel will boost spending on capacity next year. So that pairing up with the Intel Developer Forum coming next week, where they're going to pump up those Haswell chips for PC. Those are more power-efficient chips. They're only 10 watts. They should be available next year for the 2013 holidays. We've got Windows 8 coming out at the end of October. That should goose a little bit of the sales. Maybe not in the enterprise as much because they're more conservative, but people will go out and buy some Windows 8 PCs. An Intel phone is expected from Motorola. We're thinking that September 18th announcement in London could get Intel into the mobile market. Is this enough to I think the chip market's going to be basically depending on mobile going forward, but is this enough to keep Intel from slipping back farther?
I think that Intel right now is stuck in a weird time because we have this extraordinarily changing form factor of the PC, the fact that people are moving to phones, tablets, and Intel wasn't necessarily a leader in the mobile market. They were meant for power usage in desktops and laptops. And so Intel's been changing a lot of what they're doing to have a lot more power efficiency with like Ivory Bridge, and Haswell's supposed to be really good at that as well. And the fact that they signed the deal with Motorola shows that they are looking into the future, which is those mobile devices. So right now, the fact that they're not putting a lot of money into new equipment, but they will eventually, it looks like they're doing a slight shift because Intel has the ability to make fantastic chips. And that's what they've been doing for a very long time. And so I don't see them jumping on like the ARM bandwagon. What they're going to do is come up with a competing standard because
Medfield would be the mobile one, yeah.
Which was, I believe, based on the Atom processor. So like it's become efficient enough that if Motorola is willing to put their name on it and these phones will be as reliable and as power efficient as the other ones, Intel does have a good future there. Plus, with the way Windows 8 is structured, a lot of people are going to want those x86 chips on those tablets because they're going to want that desktop still because that's going to be a hard shift. And you can't have that with any ARM processor. You can say how low cost they will be or power efficient, but if you can't run the applications you want, Intel can really push that for their chips for the other tablets.
Yeah, I think if Intel just bet all their money on x86, it would be dire for them eventually. It would be a slow rundown. Not that people are going to stop buying PCs and laptops anytime soon, but obviously the bigger growing market is in those lighter weight, power efficient chips that are ARM ARM-based, and ARM's leading the way in that. Intel has tried to get in the mobile market, Sarah. I mean, what do you think the appeal can be to someone to say, hey, buy this phone, it's got Intel inside?
Well, I mean, it kind of sounds like the Sony thing to me. Intel is a really strong brand. They're in a transitionary period right now, as Iyaz said, where Intel wasn't the first chip maker to make something that was really low cost and didn't compromise on power. But they are clearly working with manufacturers to put their chips into phones. Now, I don't know how popular this particular Motorola phone is going to be later in September, but I can't imagine that Intel isn't working with as many more companies as they possibly can to change perception, not just from, oh, we don't power desktop PCs anymore because that's a dying breed. I mean, of course they do. They still want to be the leader in that arena. But there is really strong brand recognition with Intel. I mean, I know lots of people who, if you say chip maker, that's the only name that they can come up with.
Right.
Now, for power users, that doesn't really matter. But for people, when you throw out specs, like, this has got an Intel chip in it, and it's going to give you 10 hours of battery life, and this is a really good phone, I think that still really matters. It's just a matter of getting their chips into the mobile market. More so than they already have.
The other thing is Intel's been challenged before. Like when AMD was really kicking its butt, effectively Intel was just getting destroyed on specs and eventually, or statistics, and eventually Intel figured out what to do. And the fact that ARM processors are really taking off. The thing about ARM that's brilliant is that it's licensable, so you can have all these other manufacturers. But Intel can manage to take this they can manage this, I guess not crisis, but this transition.
Challenge.
Yes.
Let's call it a
Thank you. This challenge for Intel. But it's not like they've been making the wrong moves for years. Like they've constantly figured out, okay, where's the market going? What do we need to do? And they've figured out power efficiency. Because remember, years ago, they had those mobile internet device things they were showing off, and nobody wanted to be their hardware partner. Nobody did that. It wasn't until CES this year that they lined up phone manufacturers to actually have their chips in phones this year, which I was really surprised because I've always doubted that it was possible. But if Motorola wants to get behind them, I'm surprised.
I think that it's a good thing for us that Intel doesn't have a lock on the mobile market. Otherwise, it would be the same thing that we have in the PC market, which isn't awful. But you're always sort of, at least I am, always sort of cheering for AMD because you want competition. You want to drive that innovation and you want to keep the prices down. We definitely have that in the mobile chip market, partly because ARM is a licensing thing, right? NVIDIA makes ARM, Qualcomm makes ARM. You have a lot of different chip makers competing. So Intel getting into the game, I think, is a good thing because then you have a competing design as well as another competing chip. So in the end, I think consumers win. I don't think Intel's doomed by far. Let's talk about taxis.
Let's. Hey, so the service Uber is a service that was launched in San Francisco a couple years ago. I use it regularly, even though it's quite a premium over what a taxi cab would cost me for the same ride, because it's extremely convenient. I can fire up the Uber app from within my apartment, say I want to be picked up right downstairs. It'll tell me where the nearest driver is. I can see the driver on a map coming toward me, so I can walk downstairs exactly when they're pulling up. And then at the end, I just go, yeah, 5 stars for a great ride. I get out, and the whole transaction is done on the back end, so I never have to pull up my credit card or have tip money or anything like that. That's how Uber works. They've been expanding like crazy. They have expanded this particular, they call it the black car service. The cars usually are black, Lincoln Town car kind of stuff, to New York. That happened some time ago, certainly last year, I think more than a year ago. But what they have wanted to do is introduce a new app on top of their black car service, a completely different app that would actually be designed to run in the taxi cabs, the yellow cabs across New York City. Of course, New York City has an insanely large fleet of taxi cabs that are fairly easy to hail. So this makes a lot more sense for Uber to be like, we're going to do the back-end credit card transaction for the cabs that a lot of people are using anyway, on top of our black car service that's offered as a separate deal. The problem is that the New York City Taxi and Limousine Commission, also known as TLC, will not allow it. In fact, they have reminded their medallion yellow cab drivers and owners that the TLC has not authorized any electronic hailing or payment applications, so apps, for use in New York City taxi cabs. Now,
We're
Uber,
taking some tender, loving care in stopping
Right.
this from existing.
so the deal is that, okay, so the Uber folks said, well, all right, we've got to figure out some sort of a deal with the TLC here. They don't quite understand what we're doing and how this can be helpful for taxi cabs and just make everybody happier and, maybe less likely to use the subway. Everyone gets more money out of this. So Uber decided, okay, well, what we're going to do, just so we get people in New York City familiar with our service and liking the service, we're going to offer a special. So if you live in New York City, you can get up to a $25 free ride if you use us through next Tuesday. This has actually been going on all week. The drivers aren't using credit cards, so this actually isn't a problem
So
because
it sneaks around that issue.
Yeah, the TLC is saying, no, our drivers can't actually use credit card payments because that violates existing agreements we have with other companies. So Uber says, all right, well, we'll just give people a free ride, so to speak, for a little while. And in the process, we're going to try to get you to understand how our service works so we don't have this problem. The deal is that a representative from TLC says, we have contractual obligations, so payment apps cannot be used while the existing technology contracts are in place. Those existing contracts are with Verifone and a company called Creative Mobile Technologies. These are the companies that power those entertainment screens that you see in the back of the cab that have really annoying commercials, and the credit card processing on the partition of the taxi and their exclusive agreements. These agreements are in effect until next February. So TLC says there's nothing we can do about it. We are not against apps. We totally are willing to revisit this.
We just won't allow them.
We just can't do this right now. In February, let's talk.
Okay.
And we'll accept. They've set out a call for RFPs, which is requests for proposals. Uber has submitted app propositions, as have other companies. Halo is another one. It's a very popular company in London that London cabs use. But Uber says, no. We've got lawyers who are reading this whole exclusive agreement, TLC, and we shouldn't have to wait until February. We're offering a service that doesn't have to compete with your agreements, and you're basically just hampering transportation for everybody.
So what they're saying, it's the same as handing cash competes with the credit card processing. This is just a different way of handing cash, essentially.
Yes, exactly. So what's interesting, you could say, well, Uber, why don't you just wait till February? I mean, right around the corner at this point.
That's forever in internet time.
But Uber is actually coming off a successful fight with the Washington, D.C. Council, who originally, because of, I don't know, somewhat aging cab, infrastructure that was in place in that city and the surrounding boroughs for many years, had initially said, yeah, Uber, you can come on in. But because of rules that we have in place, you have to charge 5 times the amount what the same ride would be if it was one of our city, approved taxi cabs. And Uber fought them and won.
They got some brass, I gotta say.
Yeah. So this is the sort of thing where Uber says, well, listen, hey, we had an unreasonable situation before in another city, and we got everybody to back down. The lawmakers were like, you know what, this actually is pretty ridiculous. And a lot of people, certainly in social networking, were kind of, with Uber with this whole thing. So I'm interested to see if they can get the TLC, which is a really strong organization that has, again, many thousands of drivers under their employ to turn this around.
This is sounding familiar to me somehow, Iyaz. It's the internet wants to do something one way with apps, and then there's an old-fashioned industry association resisting it because it threatens their existing model. Have we seen this before?
No, I'm throwing a blank. Other than like lots of different industries that we've constantly seen, the TLC they're probably just want to push around Uber flat out. I mean, the thing is they have partners right now. They don't want to take those people off. The TLC likes to. If you've ever heard about their whole medallion system, it's a bit. I don't want to say shady, but there's all kinds of conspiracy theories involved there. So they're a big, giant kind of bully at times. So I wouldn't be surprised.
But do you think saying, listen, we have exclusive agreements with other companies is bullying a third company? I
think it's basically saying, look, we have this deal, and that's why we're not the bad guy. We want to work with you later.
Pray we don't alter it further.
that kind of deal. So the thing is, I think they want to make sure that they don't annoy their current partners as well. I mean, if their lawyers, TLC's lawyers, are saying, look, you're not supposed to be doing this, or then they have to go, oh, you know what, the Uber's attorneys say this, and there is wiggle room. I don't know if that's going to make the current partners happy either. They might not come back either. TLC probably wants every single way to get the money. Like, that's the point.
Well, that's the thing. Uber wants a cut, right? And the TLC looks at that and says, well, wait a minute. We're not losing our cut, so how are you going to get your cut? And we've got agreements with other people that want their cut. So somebody's going to lose out at some point with this. Let's finish up with the Wikipad gaming tablet coming to GameStop.
Yes, I like talking about hardware. Because the Wikipad is really coming. In January, it was showing off. This is that 10.1-inch tablet that has this game controller attachment. Now, it's supposed to be a console-quality game controller that attaches to this. And it's actually showing up. Pre-orders start today, and it ships on October 31st. It's a 10.1-inch screen, Tegra 3-powered, 1280 by 800 screen. You get Android games that are calibrated for that gamepad. Also, PlayStation mobile games will work on it. And they have deals with, or Wikipad had a deal with Gaikai, which is now rebranded. I didn't know it was rebranded. Sony Cloud Service, because Sony did buy the company. NVIDIA's Tegra Zone and Google Play. So lots of different games already lined up for this device, and it's going to take advantage of that controller. But I'm kind of curious. I think it's around $500. It's $500. Is the tablet space too crowded at this point for another $500 tablet? That the gimmick with this one is it's got a controller. Is that really enough to differentiate a device like this, or is this or is it going to be something huge? Like, hey, look, we keep seeing Android tablets; they're all the same anyway, but this one actually does something different and actually lets you play games.
Yeah, but they all let you play games, right?
With a touchscreen.
Yeah, I get. I mean, if it's going to work,
there's even Sony ones that have controllers kind of like this. They're on Android too, right?
I don't hear a lot of people clamoring that, you know, the iPad and the Kindle Fire, the two best-selling tablets, need game controllers. I mean, I hear people say it, but I don't know people say, not buying that, doesn't have a game controller. This strikes me as a very niche thing, and if it's going to work, it's in the right place, right? It's GameStop. That's where the folks who are complaining that there aren't game controllers are going to be going. So maybe they'll sell a few, but I don't see this thing taking off.
Well, maybe it's less of a matter of people complaining because the iPad or the Kindle Fire doesn't have a gaming controller. But if they saw a third option that did, they might say, well, you know what, actually, maybe I will get into the tablet market. I hadn't yet. This is something that appeals to me more, just based on my gaming enthusiasm.
One of the things that's driven me crazy about touchscreen gaming at all is the fact that my hands cover up so much of the screen. Now, I can't see what I'm doing anymore. So, like, if I was trying to play like Street Fighter on an iPod Touch, that's almost impossible because you're all over the screen. This kind of thing for a tablet, that's good because, I mean, you do have a lot more space on a tablet.
iPod Touch is also so much smaller.
Yeah, when you go to the tablet, though, you don't have that feel. You don't have that reaction of tactile feel. You just have, I'm tapping glass, which is great. But when you're gaming, you want to have that same response. And I think this thing might be different enough because, Jason, you were reviewing all these Android tablets. They all seem to be the same.
Yeah.
And this seems like a gimmick that if it works well enough, because the games are supposed to be optimized, if the Gaikai games that are supposed to be there are optimized, it's supposed to work really well with this gamepad. It would differentiate it enough that if you want to be a gamer, this is the way to go.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you to a certain point. Also, Tom, what you're saying about this being a niche kind of device, I think that's absolutely the case. You know, probably a year and a half ago, Sony Xperia phone came out and it had controllers built into it, and it was the first PlayStation certified Android device with a dedicated controller. It really didn't do that well. It seemed like a great idea, and I actually, when I saw that, I was like, wow, this could probably be a powerful trend that you're going to see a lot more devices like this because many people are gaming on their mobile devices, so this just kind of makes sense. And that was even in a phone form factor where the controller hid, so the controller wasn't as dominant and in your face as it is right here. So I don't know. I feel like this is kind of going to be a niche thing. It's cool for the few people that are looking for this type of thing. I don't see it taking the world by storm, though.
And I guess the advantage it has over a PlayStation Portable or a Nintendo 3DS is that it's also an Android tablet, right? Mm-hmm. But I don't know how big of an advantage that ends up.
And that price point, I think, after what Amazon pulled off the other day, at $4.99, they've got a way to go. Yeah,
it definitely raised the bar. Or lowered the bar, or changed the bar. Bar's in trouble.
Is altered.
Let's all go to the bar and look at the randomizer.
Randomizer.
It's a dirty bar. It's got cockroaches.
It does, but you can control them. North Carolina State University researchers have figured out a way to hook up microcontrollers to tap into a Madagascar hissing cockroach's brain.
Finally.
And send commands that fool the insect into thinking danger is near or an object is blocking its way, and therefore control it and move it around at their whim.
So by terrifying a cockroach, by controlling its brain, you can have a remote control bug.
I don't like this.
Why is that?
I know that nobody wants cockroaches in their home or to see one in a restaurant
send
or
them away with
anything
this.
like that. No, it just looks mean.
But
it
you
looks
could,
cruel.
You could.
I don't want cockroaches to be afraid because we're making them more afraid.
You
than
could
usual.
one day use this. Let's say you just use the object blocking, not the fear part, and you could have them search for trapped disaster victims.
They're not volunteering. It's not like you're training a dog. You have brain control of a cockroach.
Yeah.
Yeah, my tiny camera on their head.
This is the sort of thing that's going to backfire,
little
and then there's
pickaxe.
just going to be more cockroaches, and they're going to be mad.
Yeah, what if they're
They're going to say, "Wait
they're-
a second, I
they're
wasn't
gonna-
going to turn left. Get the human."
What if
They're
somebody
going to place
hacks-
controls on us.
Yeah.
Eventually.
Yeah, if somebody hacks the cockroaches, they'll have like a cockroach army that could attack us.
That's
a real
true.
problem.
Because you network them,
If
then
you
they
can
get into
control
Google.
their brains, somebody's going to
Don't
get their
network the
hands
cockroaches.
on the blueprints, and it's going to be mayhem.
Don't network.
Didn't we
the
all see The Dark
cockroaches.
Knight Rises?
And Battlestar Galactica, the reboot. Between those two movies, you know everything you need to know about this project.
Bad
True
idea.
State, stop it.
True story.
Let's see what's on the calendar.
2 years ago today, a man named Jason Howell joined TWiT.
And for an entire year, you saw this blog post on the front page of TWiT for some reason.
Oh,
It was that
well,
special.
I guess so.
It's been a wonderful 2 years.
Yay, Jason.
Yay. And here's to many more. TechCrunch Disrupt Hackathon and Conference is starting tomorrow in San Francisco. It's actually the hackathon over the weekend. The conference runs through the 12th. Kind of funny that the Apple announcement, one of their days. Anyway.
Got disrupted.
Yeah, it got disrupted. Good one. Intel Developers Forum starts on Tuesday, runs through the 13th. And finally, on Wednesday, there's that event by Apple. I don't know anybody who's going.
Probably a new Apple II.
That's the Hi-Fi 2.
2E.
Yeah. Two, they're down to Z at this point. I think.
In all seriousness, we will be here early covering we're actually going to be here early for an episode of TNT that starts an hour earlier. Then we'll be covering the announcement, which starts at 10 a.m. Pacific time. Join us, won't you?
We are going to have to be here.
Yeah.
Let's see what's incoming.
Incoming message.
Always a message. Gee.
Yes, another message. What does this message have to say? It's actually a voice message. Let's listen in, shall we?
Hey guys, regarding the Motorola phones not shipping with Jelly Bean, I have to ask this question. What phones are shipping with Jelly Bean? Because the only one I know of is the Nexus. So I think it's a bit unfair to rant about Motorola not having Jelly Bean because nobody else is shipping with it, for heaven's sakes. Yeah, I'd love to have it on my Android phone, but, again, the Nexus. That's the only one. If you know of another one, I'd love to know. Thanks.
Well, I mean, the reason that we were pointing fingers at Motorola is because of the Motorola-Google relationship. That's the company that has more of a relationship with Google than other companies. You could say it's Google itself.
Yeah, right. I think that was most of the ranting. But
Yeah.
Jason, he's right. There's nothing else besides the Nexus that we know of, right?
Yeah, and I mean, not all the Nexuses have Jelly Bean either. The Verizon Galaxy Nexus still doesn't have Jelly Bean. So yeah, you're absolutely right. There are no phones aside from the Nexuses that have Jelly Bean. The Galaxy Note 2 was announced to be released with Jelly Bean, but we still don't have a release date on that. So it's kind of, yes, it's coming out with Jelly Bean, but who knows when that's going to be. I think really it's like you said, Sarah, it's just that kind of perception that now that Google owns Motorola, couldn't they, make that happen? Aside from that, Google did mention when they took Motorola in that it was going to be an autonomous unit.
That's what I mean. Wasn't the clamoring like, oh, so Motorola is going to get all kinds of favoritism from Google. I don't care what Google says.
Yeah, right.
This is going to happen. And then when it doesn't happen, oh, so Motorola doesn't even get Jelly Bean? How stupid is that?
Damned if you do, damned if you don't. Yeah. It's totally, and I fell victim of that myself.
All right, that's it for this episode of Tech News Today. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. And thanks for submitting stories. Those of you who do. Almost 10,000 people in there in our subreddit, technewstoday.reddit.com. Place to go if you want to suggest a story for us to cover or just see the suggestions people have been making and kind of vote and say, I really want to see that one. Go ahead and press that plus button or the negative button if you're like, I definitely do not want to hear you yammer on about that, Merritt. So go to technewstoday.reddit.com. Also, If a particular moment anytime in the week catches your fancy and you say, that was a really good moment there, Sarah Lane, you can send that moment to TNT@twit.tv with the subject line best of, and Jason will mark it to put into our show at the end of the year. Yeah, it's a clip show, but it's kind of fun to see all these moments from throughout the year. That's TNT@twit.tv, subject line best of. We are done until next Monday, but you can always find us at twit.tv/TNT if you miss us and just rewatch the episodes over and over again all weekend long. You can also email us, as I mentioned, TNT@twit.tv, and give us a call. Leave us a voicemail, 260-TNT-SHOW. Willie Dills Gregory from The Instance is coming with us on Monday. We'll see you then.